But our top story this hour is the U.S. versus China on a trade deal. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said that the first phase of a trade agreement with China is actually in the final stages, but President Trump is not ready to sign it just yet. The president weighing in at a rally in Louisiana last night. Watch.
You know, we're making a great deal with China, or we're taking in billions in tariffs. I can live either way. They want to make the deal much more than I do.
Joining me right now is Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. Mr. Secretary, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to see you, Maria.
So what can you tell us? Where are we in terms of doing a deal with the Chinese? I mean, obviously, this week we've been all over the map. First, they wanted all the tariffs off. The president put water on that the president was not going to take any tariffs off, and we're still expecting a tariff increase in December. Then yesterday we heard that the Chinese are balking at buying the amount of agriculture that the president has signaled. Where are we in a trade deal?
Well, you don't really have a deal on anything until you have a deal on everything. So it's not surprising that at the very last minute pieces are bouncing around. But I think the main thing is what the president said at the rally last night. China wants to make a deal. We think we'd like to make a deal. If it's the right deal, this will get made in all likelihood.
In all likelihood, but will the Chinese agree to an enforcement mechanism where there are consequences if we find out that they continue to steal intellectual property?
Well, as you know, this phase one is relatively limited in its scope. And what's really being debated is how much limitation will there be on the scope of phase one relative to phase two or maybe phase three. So let's see what comes out. The devil is always in the details, and we're down to the last details now.
The last details are probably the most important, right? Will they stop stealing intellectual property, and will the president remove the tariffs?
Well, the president hasn't agreed to move the tariffs. I think he made that pretty clear the other day. But let's just see what comes. I think the important thing is it looks as though there will be this first giant step toward peace and quietude with the Chinese. That's the important thing to focus on. We'll see the details as they come through, and they're going to be good details, or else the president will not go along with it.
So the most important, this big phase one, is about market access, Secretary? Is it just about giving financial services companies the ability to own their companies out and out in China, whereas right now you have to own 49% of a joint venture with the Chinese company having the majority?
Right. Well, it's about a lot of things, but the major focus is the focus on current trade. That's where the president was talking about the 40 to 50 billion in agriculture. So one of the questions is, how firm is that commitment going to be, and what happens if they don't live up to it? That kind of issue is really important to getting this put together.
Do you see that the Chinese are balking at the amount of agriculture that the president said that they would buy? I mean, do you have an agreement that the Chinese are actually going to buy the agriculture that the president said that they would?
Well, they can certainly afford to buy 40 to 50 billion. In fact, they really need that phased in over the couple of year time period. Question is, are they willing to commit to it? And if they are willing to commit, are there any escape hatches to the commitment?
And that's really the important detail. Is there an escape hatch? Just like, are there open doors to Huawei technology? I want to ask you about Huawei because Attorney General
Sure.
William Barr says the Chinese telecom giants Huawei and Zte are threats to national security, and they cannot be trusted. Secretary, what do you say about that?
Well, as you know, we have put them in the penalty box. They've been put on the entity list, and it's over that kind of issue that we have done that. It's also over that kind of issue that FCC is in the process of taking some definitive action. These are dangerous situations. 5G is going to be running everything. It's the Internet of Things. If somebody can do evil in the context of 5G, they can do real evil to the whole country. We can't afford to let that happen. We in this country have made the decision Huawei is not an appropriate player to have control of our 5G market, and a number of other countries are also following us. Attorney General Barr heads up the department that has brought the indictments against Huawei up in that are being in court right now. And Huawei has let their chief financial officer, who's also the daughter of the main shareholder, they've let her stay under house arrest in Canada for a year now, rather than let her testify. If they have nothing to worry about, why are they letting her be stuck in house arrest for a year rather than have her come down and defend herself?
Right. I mean, if Huawei is such a question, such a risk, why would we have these waivers in place? The deadline in terms of waivers for American companies to work with Huawei is coming up. Is there any reason to believe that these waivers are going to be lifted?
Well, let's focus on what we really mean by waivers. What we've given is a temporary general license, mainly so that the rural telecom companies in the U.S. can continue to function. They, unfortunately, are very dependent on Huawei for 3G and 4G. There are enough problems with telephone service in the rural communities. We don't want to knock them out. So one of the main purposes of the temporary general licenses is to let those rural guys continue to operate. That doesn't have anything to do with Huawei's efforts in 5G. What the Attorney General was talking about and what we're really focusing on is the 5G. Can you trust Huawei to be the 5G supplier for your country? Our conclusion thus far is no.
What is it going to take for Europe to better understand this, Secretary? Because it feels like the Europeans have their Huawei infrastructure in place, and it's expensive to dismantle it and change it. Do you see any change in terms of the Europeans? Because Secretary Pompeo told me that if the Europeans continue to use Huawei, we're going to share less information with them.
Well, remember, Europe is not one monolith. Some of the countries there have indicated that they might use Huawei for 5G. Some have indicated they have not. Boris Johnson, for example, has said that that matter is under review in the UK. So I don't think it's quite accurate to say that all of Europe is going to use Huawei. Problem is, some people are tempted by low price, and that's a real dangerous trap. Are you willing to settle for a huge risk to your national security just to save a few bucks on the installation of your 5G system? The United States feels we're not.
Yeah, it's a really important point that you just made. Secretary, real quick on this deal that the U.S. is negotiating. I want to get to USMCA, but as my final question on this, do you expect we'll get to a phase one deal with the Chinese?
I think there's a very high probability of it. At the last minute, we were disappointed in May. Maybe we get disappointed again now. And if we do, the president has made quite clear he's happy to live with this situation where we impose tariffs. So we're really in a win-win position. Either the tariffs will continue or we'll have an acceptable deal with China. So the important thing is to make sure that the deal is what we think it is, make sure that it is consistent with the promises that they've made to us. If it is what it seems to be, and if it's consistent, then we'll have a deal.
It feels like we're in the same place that we were last week. Is there any reason to be optimistic that we're any closer this morning?
Oh, yeah, we're much farther along in terms of detail. There are calls all the time. Another call today. There's a lot of work being put in on this. This is not a thing where people are just sitting around stargazing. People are working quite actively on a real-time basis to try to put this together. What's a little unfortunate is that when the Chilean conference where it was to be announced got put off, it eliminated a very important deadline. It's great to have a deadline when you're having negotiations. Now that that deadline got removed through no fault of the Chinese and through no fault of ours, it takes off a little bit of the time pressure. And I think that's really what we're dealing with.
I see. So the work that's happening now is trying to get the Chinese to understand that we need an enforcement mechanism in there? Is that one of the main issues?
What's happening now is to make sure we are precise in what the parties have agreed to and what are the consequences if they don't live up to the agreement.
I see. And is the December 15th deadline for the tariffs, is that a date you're going to uphold, whereas the tariffs will go, an increase in tariffs go into effect December 15th?
Well, the president hasn't indicated any change thus far, and there's plenty of time between now and the 15th. So let's see what happens in the real world rather than just speculate as to what might be.
All right. So you want to try to get a deal done before the December 15th tariff increase goes into effect?
Well, I'm pretty sure the Chinese would like to have it done, too.
Yes.
Because if there's no deal, there's not very much probability of any relief on the tariffs.
The USMCA story feels better this morning, Secretary. Let me ask you about that, because House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that a trade pact breakthrough with the Trump administration could be near. Listen to this.
We are moving positively in terms of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. I do believe that if we can get this to the place it needs to be, which is imminent, that this can be a template for future trade agreements. I'd like to see us get it done this year. I mean, that would be my goal. I don't imagine that it would take much more in the Senate to pass.
Secretary, I think there are about, 14 days left for the rest of the year where Congress is in session.
Right.
Do you expect the deal?
Congress doesn't work every day, so you're right. It's probably about 14 days left. But as to what Speaker Pelosi was saying, this deal already is a very good template for future deals. It's much stronger on the issues the Democrats claim to be concerned about than the old USMCA, the old US NAFTA deal, and it's much better on the issues of labor, environment, and especially economics and protections than any trade deal in the history of the U.S. has ever been. So there is no substance to their continued delay. They've cost the economy billions of dollars already by delaying as long as they have. It's time to get serious. It's time to pay attention to something that really helps everyday Americans instead of having these silly hearings.
Yeah. Do you believe that she could continue with her public hearings to try to impeach this president while also trying to get USMCA over the finish line? Do you think this deal happens? Will it pass by year end?
I think there's no question that if she puts it on the floor, it will be overwhelmingly voted. So the real question is when or if she's willing to put it on the floor.
Yeah. So we don't know. Do you think she will?
I hope so. For the good of the country, that would be the singular accomplishment of this Congress, would be finally going along.
Right.
Remember, they've been fooling around with this for a year.
I know that.
Year.
Mr. Secretary, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Wilbur Ross. We'll be right back.